May we have a roll call, please?
Chairperson Philip Goldstein,
Here.
Vice Chairperson Marty Jost,
Here.
Commissioner Tom Wood,
Here.
Commissioner Wendy Newland, Commissioner Renzo Bianchi, Alternate Commissioner Janelle Mines, here. Alternate Commissioner Mara Johnson. Here.
Staff, it seems rather a moot point under the circumstances, but we wouldn't have taken public comment anyway because it's a work session, correct?
Sure. Sounds good.
Okay, thank
There's
you.
a lot of people here wanting to comment, but
Right, like I said, a moot point. So we have the consent agenda consists solely of the minutes of the July 21st meeting. Commissioners, any additions or corrections to the minutes? Nope. Hearing none, do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Have a second? Have a moved and seconded. All in favor, say. Hang on a second. I erred once again. So we have to vote on that. So Mara will vote because Janelle voted last time, and here comes Renzo. So okay, we are nothing if not relaxed here for a work session. Okay, come on up here and prepare to vote on the consent agenda. All right, it's been moved and seconded that the consent agenda be approved. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda is approved on a 5-0 vote. All right, moving on to the business, we have one item, work session on the draft goals and policies. I believe this would be you, Scott. Introduce it at least.
thank you, commissioners. Again, tonight we just have one item on our agenda. It's a work session to go over some draft material for the comprehensive plan. This is an opportunity for kind of a check-in at the process, get some key feedback from you all on some policy guidance and direction as our consultants continue to work through finalizing the plan. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our project team manager and to give a presentation. And again, this is an open dialogue for feedback for everybody to give to staff and our consultants. So we have Ryan Hengris and Cara Dodds as part of Barry Dunn. They've been working with us on implementing the project. Cara is the project manager, so I'll turn it over to them to kick things off.
Good evening. Great to see you all again. Thank you for having us here today to talk about the goals and policies and the other items that we have been working on to help to bring this comprehensive plan together. So this evening, I'll first just go through some project updates. Just to bring you up to speed with what we have been working on behind the scenes with the town. And then we can talk about the goals and the policies that will be part of the comprehensive plan. And during that time, we will take any input, answer any questions that you may have on it. It's really meant to be an open dialogue and open discussion on those goals and policies. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. So this is the agenda for this evening. So I'll go through some updates first, and then we'll have the goals and policies discussion, and then we'll talk about next steps. So what's been happening with the comprehensive planning process? So first, we have been working with the town on the growth management section of the comprehensive. This section will include the 3 Mile Plan, the annexation plan, as well as the strategic growth element. All three elements are required elements by the state. And the strategic growth element is a new element this time around, a new requirement. But all of these really work hand in hand and go together to give a big picture view of where and how the town will grow into the future. With the annexation strategy, we worked with the town on developing an annexation methodology, and that methodology will help to um, build some standardization in terms of making annexation decisions. So, and the purpose of that methodology is to help to support organized growth, ensure that there is cohesion in land development, and to avoid leapfrogging in land development. And just to ensure that there is alignment with land use. The place types work, the place types map will also be working in parallel and there'll be some consistency between the annexation, growth management, as well as the place types map as well. And with the annexation strategy, these are just some items that went into developing that methodology. So, take into account that there are some parcels that may not be suitable for development. So we really want to key into those parcels that do make for good development parcels without floodplains and that don't have too steep of slopes. We also want to ensure that in annexation and growth management decisions that there is some contiguity to the town limits. So parcels that are considered for strategic growth, parcels that are considered for annexation should also have some adjacency to those town boundaries. And just to ensure that there's also infrastructure available and that these parcels are also strong candidates for market readiness. The strategic growth element will work also hand in hand with the annexation strategy. And the strategic growth element, we also worked with the town on developing a methodology to standardize the approach to parcels that would make good candidates for development. So, in looking at that, we considered parcels that had some development capacity. So those vacant parcels, underutilized parcels, and then identifying out of those parcels which ones have the accessibility for water, roads, and sewer. And that, with the combination of those factors, um, that helps to identify which parcels are those strong candidates for strategic growth. So as you can see up here on the map, those darker green parcels, the parcels that score high in terms of development capacity, and also score high in terms of accessibility to both water and sewer. And then the gradient, the color gets lighter as you go down to parcels that are more constrained. Those more constrained parcels do not have that accessibility to those infrastructure elements. As part of strategic growth, every municipality will also have to identify existing policies for strategic growth, as well as developing new goals and policies. So, in terms of existing policies, we incorporated elements that may be familiar to you, the growth management area, and also the statutorily required 3 mile plan. We also, in this category of existing policies, talked about the work that the county has been doing with developing intergovernmental agreements and the work that it does with surrounding municipalities in the county on developing or identifying cooperative planning areas. And these elements help to proactively plan for that that strategic growth that is also orderly growth and that considers adjoining municipalities in that process. The water supply element is also something that we have been working with the town on. This element is also a newly requirement with the comprehensive plan. Um, with the water supply element, three key features need to be included. One, all municipalities will have to coordinate with water providers in the comprehensive planning process, and not just in the comprehensive planning process, but also, um, talk about how that coordination will continue throughout the life cycle of the comprehensive plan. Also, the all municipalities need to identify what their potential water supply demand is, and this is a high level target, a high level range, and over time, this range could change, but using a similar approach to other municipalities in the area and with the Colorado Water Plan, identifying what that expected water supply demand would be. And that's kind of like the area, that you want to make sure that you stay within, but also um, identifying what would be that conservation target. So if the town actively implements water conservation policies over time, it is hopeful that the town can move closer to a conservation target. And so the water conservation policies are also another required component with the water supply element in the comprehensive. And this is talking about the water coordination with water providers. So with the water supply element, water conservation policies will help to reduce the water demand, set clear expectations that will help to align growth and capacity and proactively plan for that growth and water use.
Good evening. I'm Ryan Hegernus, also supporting this project, and also had the opportunity to project manage the park and recreation plan for Timnath recently. I wanted to cover some of the community engagement efforts for this planning process. You can see on the screen here, this began in March of this year and included a variety of ways to engage with residents, with stakeholders, and with staff. It included workshops, focus groups with the Technical Review Committee and the Planning Commission, drop-in opportunities to engage and ask questions, open house events for the community, pop-up engagements in Wild Wing Park, and then council work sessions and internal staff review. Some of what we heard from the community you see on this slide. I won't read all of these, but want to highlight some of the themes that we heard. Included balancing growth and infrastructure as a key theme, as well as flexible place types, protecting natural resources, connecting Timnath revitalization, commercial and employment use, and so on. And we also asked the community about those place types and what is important to them. And in a moment, we'll talk more about place types. But some of the themes that residents highlighted, you'll see the top three are services, things like grocery stores and salons, dining, restaurants, cafes, things like that, and then park and recreation and open space offerings. So those stood out as the three biggest themes, followed by walkability and bikeability, and then you see additional categories below.
So, continuing on from there, so the town, as Ryan was describing, did some community engagement with the place types, and they really wanted to diligently considered what the community was saying, as well as just really making sure that the place types development is very intentional and gives clear guidelines of where, how to develop. So the town also, we've been working with them on doing a lot of work on giving some refinement to those place types. So there are 10 total place types here. And in general, some of the updates that have been made to the place types map and the descriptions of the place types, just looking at it from a high level standpoint, was one to take the residential neighborhoods category that was previously proposed and breaking it into established neighborhoods and emerging neighborhoods. And the staff really felt like that was important because first you with the established neighborhoods, you really want to recognize those neighborhoods that are already there, that already have a presence and they're already defined character. But at the same time, recognize where there could be emerging neighborhoods, um, those neighborhoods that will emerge over time and will come into realization over the lifeline of the comprehensive plan. Um, a few other updates. There were some updates to terminology, to colors of the comprehensive plan, and also adding in a transitional overlay. This overlay really takes a look at those former, well, not former, but older rural residential areas and just recognizing that over time these areas may be areas where it may transition into another use or another design and character form. And I should also say on this last slide, this map here is just meant to be just part of the presentation. It's not, I know it's really small. There is a map that is more readable that can be shared. The other element that we have been working on is the implementation action plan. And this action plan will help to take the goals and policies that are developed and put some action steps behind them, and to identify, the lead for this action, who will be overall responsible for the action, who will the partners be, what type of funding may be needed to complete this action, and the timing. So, being that this is a high-level policy document, it's not done to a finite point in terms of funding or timing, but it gives a general parameter of if we're considering low, medium, or high when it comes to those categories. And so, as we have been having these discussions with the council, with you all, as well as with the technical review committee, we will be taking that input, doing updates to the goals and policies, and then doing updates to the implementation action plan. So everything will work seamlessly together. And here, before we get into the goals and policies discussion, this just shows a high level view of how it all works together. So, as you may remember, when we were here in the spring, we talked about the vision and the guiding principles that were developed. The vision and the guiding principles were developed based off of input from you all, also input from the community, and those that vision gives that aspirational, long-term view of what we want the town to be in the next 10 years, 20 years. And those guiding principles help to anchor that vision. That then helps to inform the goals. And the goals then help to inform the policies, and then the policies help to inform the implementation action. So it all kind of flows together. And this is just an overall an overview of all of the goals and policies and the different categories we will discuss today. And as you can see, those guiding principles: healthy and sustainable, resilient and innovative, connected and livable, and local centric and North Colorado focused, they are also connected to the goals and the policies in the comp plan. So before we go into further detail with our discussion on the goals and the policies, I want to take a pause and just see if there are any questions or any input from what we have already discussed.
Commissioners, I've got a couple, but anybody else? Yep. Anybody else on what's happened so far?
Yeah, I've got a few
Yeah,
comments
go
and
ahead.
questions, but I don't know if this is the best place or time to.
Okay, I think Carol, we're talking about anything you've shared so far.
Right, that is
If
correct.
it's something we've covered to this point.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you've covered, and I appreciate all the things that you've done. And there's been a lot of emphasis on the water piece of this and the conversations and so forth. And that happens to be an area I know a little bit about. Have you had sit-down meetings with the water providers, with Fort Collins, Loveland, and some of the others?
Yes, we've been engaging with them through the comprehensive planning process. So we had conversations with them in the beginning when we started the process, as well as in the spring when we came back to do some additional engagement. And they are also part of our technical review committee. Some of them are part of our technical review committee. So we met with them earlier today as well.
Carol, could you explain what the Technical Review Committee, I know what it is, and we have two members of the commission that sit on that. Could you explain that for the rest of the commissioners, please?
Yes, the technical review committee consists of representatives from multiple facets in the community, and they are there to be the technical advisors as we go through the comprehensive planning process. So, water and sewer providers sit on the technical review committee. You also have town representatives, such as a couple of individuals from this commission. You have a council member, someone from Guide Our Growth, Habitat for Humanity. So and the county as well. So it gives a broad cross section to make sure a lot of diverse perspectives are represented in that group.
One of the concerns I have with some of the water and conservation, for decades now, these issues have been a hot button in the Denver metro area, particularly the suburbs surrounding Denver, due to the same water issues that we're experiencing here and the growth that they've had down there. And things that are different about Colorado and Western water than it may be in other states. The water here is sold by the gallon, and there's no tax money put into the water systems. And all of these conservation things are being put down onto towns. The state is pushing towns, hey, you got to do this, but it's not funded. We're not funded by taxes, or we don't get any of the money that they get from selling the water. So it's kind of an unfunded mandate, and it's been the topic of decades of lawsuits and legal issues in the southern part of Denver, and it's certainly a lesson that we may want to learn up here, that it's not necessarily something that's going to help the economic development of the town of Timnath to get involved in so much of that water. And I'm all in favor of water conservation, but then the downside of it is, who's going to run around and say, hey, you can't turn on your sprinklers this week? Or who's going to pay for the conservation statistics and monitoring and all that sort of stuff? The water districts aren't going to do that. And the water districts are in it for the money, the dollars per gallon. The town doesn't share any of that. So it's a very strong conflict. And I would encourage you to look at the history, particularly history between Denver Water and the city and county of Denver, who have sued each other for decades over this issue, and they still have not really resolved it. And the smaller towns, which are identical to Timnath, which have gone through growth and lack of water, they're in the same boats. And it's been a conflict. I used to sit on the water boards. I know some of that. It's a real issue. Carolyn Steffi, who's our town lawyer, she was directly involved in a lot of that for years. I think that we are jumping into an area that it's already been plowed by others. And I'm very concerned that the town would spend an awful lot of money and get very little return in terms of what's for the good of Tinmouth.
Thank you.
Just a concern.
I appreciate that.
So I think just to kind of follow up, I think we had a little bit of this discussion earlier today about what level this plan is. I think some of the things that you're talking about are pretty far beyond the scope of what this is doing. A lot of the action items that would fall under many of these things are in regards to water. One, we have to meet state requirements, which aren't very much, but we have to talk about these topics. Two, it's probably more about coordinating than mandating. There's a big difference there. We already do that pretty regularly with one of our water providers. They appreciate the feedback, understanding what our future land uses are. Where do we think the growth is going to go, so they can anticipate and plan for the infrastructure they need in order to deliver the water. So I think, again, it's probably less about who's going to go out and knock on your door and saying, Tom, you're watering too much today, and more about how do we make sure that we're anticipating for the water demands that we need in order to grow.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate that. There are some new water districts. For example, the new Cobb Lake Water Treatment Authority has just developed, and it's right up in the top corner of our development area, where you've indicated on your maps there's no water yet to be had, but that water treatment plant is supposed to come online by 2030. There may be infrastructure up there for development that is not reflected in the maps today. In fact, the town of Tinmouth just gave some easements for the pipelines.
Yes, and that's why these are, when we talk about water demand, they're also targets. They are, and they're going to have to be updated over time. So new realities will come into play. It's not a perfect science going in, but you need a target, you need a goal. And over time, as the state will do its update, so will municipalities have to as well, as those realities change.
I understand, and you hear my comments.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Chair, a couple of things. Unless anybody else has anything to this point. You mentioned the 3-mile plan. At one point, you mentioned 3-mile plan, a 3-mile buffer. Can you elaborate on the plan itself and the buffer? Is that two separate things?
It's the same. Sorry for the terminology mix-up. It's the same thing. So you may be talking about so that we said it was a buffer, but really it's the 3-mile. It's really where that 3-mile planning area is. And that's where the town really should target its future annexation decisions, because that's where there will be those parcels that are contiguous or near currently developed parcels where infrastructure is more readily available. So that's really the same thing, the 3-mile plan and the 3-mile buffer.
Give me an example, if you would, please, of how this comes into play.
Yes, so for example, if there is an annexation request, the town can take that annexation methodology and go through, it's almost like a series of questioning the annexation decision. Is it within that 3-mile area? Does it have market readiness? Who are the parcel owners? Is it private? Does it have any commercial use alignment? Does it have water and sewer accessibility? Is it near existing roads? And is it with contiguous or near existing town boundaries? So it's a series of just questioning in order to have some consistency and standardization in making annexation decisions.
Are these absolutes or are these guidelines?
They're guidelines, same as, and this is a policy document. It's not regulatory. The regulatory piece comes in that implementation. So taking those goals and policies and then identifying specific action steps. Some of those steps may require some regulatory actions by the town, such as updating the land use code. But this itself is a policy and it's a guide, and it's really there to help to have, plan proactively for orderly growth and have some consistency in the annexation decisions that are made.
So to clarify, it's required by state law to have a 3-mile plan. And many places often just use the future land use map as the plan. That's what Timnath has done since this has been required, but technically every year we're supposed to submit a 3-mile plan to the state.
And I'll come back to that and how that differs from the other action plan. Another question again, you mentioned either before or after, one of the goals was avoiding unincorporated enclaves being created. I assume that means those that don't already exist. And we obviously have flagpole development already. So this is to not do anything that would facilitate adding to that problem, if in fact it's considered a problem.
Correct.
Just to not do anything toward that end.
Right, exactly. So this is for future planning, 10 years, 20 years out. How are we going to ensure that we're making annexation decisions, growth management decisions that help to achieve the growth goals for the town and what you want the town to grow and develop like over the lifetime of the comprehensive plan.
And then you mentioned transitional neighborhoods and such, I believe was the term, that they may be suitable for some other use.
Over time.
Over time. What's an example? I think I get this, but what's an example of that? Would Old Town be an example of that, where you find it, perhaps it's more suitable to improve it, to transition it to different uses?
No, it wouldn't include Old Town, and the town may also want to add into this, but it's really, for instance, like a rural area that's currently in the county where there is some rural residential. Over the lifeline of the comprehensive plan, again, talking 10 years, 20 years, that area may become something else. That type of area is very different from your Wild Wing, which was developed in recent years. Those are established neighborhoods that are probably going to continue to be there for a very long time. Does that, Logan, Scott, is there anything you want to add to that piece?
Lots north of Busgrove, north of Old Town. So those are residential lots, but they're very large, so they can be infilled over time. So those are kind of the, what do we call it? Transitional overlay.
Thank you. Yeah, Wendy.
This is probably, Scott, this is probably for you. Do we currently follow an annexation strategy?
Not specifically, no. So again, the 3-mile plan was required back in 1987. Really, it just helps make sure that when you're annexing, there's a purpose behind it. If you don't have one, it could set up some challenges to your annexation. I'm not aware if we had any official annexation strategy other than the future land use map, which covered much greater area than a 3-mile buffer zone. Yeah.
Just curious how this one differed from what we currently do, but it sounds like we didn't have one, so.
Not that I could find. Earlier in the late 80s, I found some that were submitted to the state, but that's about all I could find. Yeah.
Are we ready to move on to the goals and policies? Ready? Yep. Yes. Thanks.
So to start off our discussion on the goals and policies, we'll talk about growth management. So with these slides, The section that is in the red will be the goal, and the bulleted items that follow will be the policies. So you all received the goals and policies matrix, which has more detail, but just to ensure that we're not overpopulating the slides with too many words on the slides. We just condensed it a little bit to give the same idea of what these policies represent. So just to help you to navigate as we go through these slides. So the first goal here is about growth management, and is to ensure growth, annexation, and infrastructure planning support complete neighborhoods, coordinated investment, and long-term fiscal sustainability. And I won't exhaust you all by reading the policies word for word, but please let us know if this feels right to you, if there's anything that you have a question on or you would add.
Renzo?
Yeah, just as a clarification, when we talk about connected neighborhoods, are we talking about both roads and trail systems?
Both rails and transit?
Roads and trail systems.
Yes.
I think we're good on that.
So this is the next goal under growth management: promote compact, connected, and efficient land use patterns.
Question on that point. If you look at Tinmouth today, we have a few compact mixed-use neighborhoods, but for the most part, the town of Tinmouth is spread out, and there's large residential sections and a very few small mixed-use or commercial sections. Is it realistic to say that as a town, we're really going to meet that compact goal? I don't know. I don't know that that's achievable, maybe, for the town of Tinmouth. And I wonder, is compact mixed use complete? Is that really the goal that we want to go after? Is that something that is achievable for the town of Tinmouth? I think it's a good general thing to say, and I see a lot of planning documents kind of focus there. But I don't see that as an advantage for the town of Tinmouth. I know that some of your talk is encouraging compact rather than low dispersed, low density, auto-oriented patterns, but in fact we are a lower density, auto-centric development, and I don't see how we're going to create super changes that are going to change that. And more to the point, I don't think that the concept of you get more compact area will require less services or more efficient services. I think if you look at other suburb areas in Colorado, the compact higher density areas actually require more services, and maybe there's a service per person ratio, but if you talk to the police department, they're called out to the more high density areas more frequently than the low density areas, and I don't know that that's really a goal we should have as a town.
Well, thank you for those comments. What this tries to do is try to have policies to help to encourage that. When you have compact mixed-use development, the land development happens more efficiently. It's more efficient use of land development, and it's less sprawling of land. In terms of services, the services could be, you mentioned when police are called out. Well, if you do have more people in an area than you would in a low-density subdivision, you may have more calls just because in that same area there are more people. But it doesn't mean that when you compare apples to apples, it doesn't necessarily mean that the service calls are greater or less. They could be about the same. It's just that you have more people in a defined area when you have compact
Yeah, I haven't seen statistics that support that view. And I question, we should probably plan to have a town that has desirable living areas rather than undesirable living areas. And I know there's a lot of back and forth and it can be political, but I'm concerned that having higher density, mixed-use areas as a goal is not necessarily what people in Tinmouth are looking for.
Tom, when I read this one, I don't remember if you were on that field trip with us that we took. And Logan, you were with us on that. You could add more to this if you would. But that was what I thought was the compact mixed-use type of example. And it was a great area, and it would be an ad in the right spot. Not necessarily all over, but in the right spot.
I think you both have expressed, and anybody else can weigh in on this, you both expressed for our consultants and our staff your views on it. Anybody else on this one? Just, I want to keep us moving.
Yeah, and we can take that in, but I think, again, when we get developments in the county, we're often referred to, are they eligible for annexation? And providing services is one of the things that we look at regularly with Public Works, police and fire, other infrastructure, roads. And so those all do come into factors. So just even maintaining our streets, running plows, trash services, which we don't do, they're private. All those things go into that metric of, hey, is this eligible for annexation? So the further, the lower density, the further you sprawl out, those costs of services are hard to maintain and sustain. And so I think that's why this is in there, is how do we grow maybe smart and wisely rather than just haphazardly and whatever. So I think that's kind of a combination of what both you all are saying on that, is we need to be mindful as we grow to make sure that we're prioritizing these developments so that as we extend our services that make sense on a per person, not on per acre basis, because extending those services does cost more. Trip distances, road miles, all those things start adding up on that calculus. So again, thanks for that feedback.
And to my two colleagues, please know I'm not trying to cut off. I just want to make sure, that's why we're here, to express opinions. We've had two opinions expressed, and I just want to make sure we get through as much of this as we can.
Thank you both. So this is the next section on natural resources conservation and resilience. The first one is about water conservation, reduce per capita water use, and improve long-term water efficiency across all sectors. And the next one is about water governance, establish a coordinated and enforceable framework for water conservation. We talked a little bit about this earlier. Any additional questions or feedback on these two items?
I'll ask to, not entirely on point with what Tom was asking, but did you hear anything with the engagements with the water districts? I assume you met, they were all included in some fashion. Did you hear anything that gave you pause on, that informs this plan, this draft plan going forward?
That gave me pause, not necessarily that gave me pause, but just more so emphasizing the importance of continuing to coordinate with them. The town has multiple water providers, and so it is important to, as development decisions are made, to continue that coordination. And I think that's what they're looking for, and I think that's what the town is saying too. So nothing that really gave me pause, but I think it just further emphasized why that process is so important.
Thank you.
This one is about coordination. So strengthen regional, and this is about water coordination. strengthen regional coordination and infrastructure-aware conservation planning. And the next one, again, about water conservation, monitor, adapt, and improve conservation strategies over time.
Again, this is not regulatory, this is more recommendations and coordination.
This is, right, this is policy level, absolutely. The comprehensive plan is meant to be a guide, to help to guide those decisions, land use decisions, and how the town grows and develops over the lifeline of the plan.
Are we going to be promoting recycled water, gray water use? Reason why?
It's super expensive.
So's water.
Yeah, so we're actually looking at that policy right now. The state changed requirements on gray water systems before, I might have it backwards. Now you have to specifically opt out of it. And I think the data has shown that of the municipalities that have allowed it, very few have had any uptake for gray water systems. And so we're going to bring that agenda forward at council about that. It's really some issues regarding how expensive they are and how to monitor them. And that's something that we're looking at in regards to a policy, but that's not in this comprehensive plan. It's more of a building code change that we're looking at implementing.
Staying within our natural resources and conservation and resilience category, we're going to get into open space and habitat preservation. First goal is to rebalance development with open space, habitat, and natural landscape preservation. And the next goal is about sensitive species and habitat coordination. So protect sensitive species, habitat areas, and ecological resources.
I've got a question. In the packet, it talks about that there's nothing federally associated in our area, but there's Colorado Parks and Wildlife that identified some. And you drive down Harmony and you see all the birds and that. Is that what's considered part of the Colorado, or is it something different?
For those specifics, I would need to go back and take a look to see if we have that information, if that area specifically is where it is considered.
So currently we coordinate through the state, but the feds still regulate federally protected animals. So we won't directly coordinate with the feds. The state sort of administers those sites, and we coordinate with them on those species. And then I do want to follow up a little bit on the gray water. Another thing that we've considered are water rights, and it becomes very complicated on what that share of water is and where it came from. And that's something that we've learned. It's very difficult to unbundle that water right in regards to gray water systems.
So water, these goals are about water. The first one is about surface water, watershed, and water quality. Protect and enhance surface water resources, watershed health, and water quality through coordinated planning, development review, and restoration efforts. And on groundwater and wetland enhancement and protection, support groundwater recharging and wetland enhancement. These look good to you all?
Again, there's a lot of stuff in water, and it's a lot of effort. I just worry, is the town going to be saddled with the expense of doing all of those things without any recompense?
One thing, I have this marked specifically so I can address it as you rather than bring it up at the end. But the one thing I add with this, in this section, is it just seems like we're going to need to be more directive, when we do this, rather than, because the words in there were encourage. And I think we need to be more directive because, an example that I thought of as I read that is, when I go on runs and things, I see residents that have put drain tiles in and directly draining their lawns and chemicals near wetlands and, very close to the reservoir. So, we know they're there, but we don't do anything. So we'll probably have to be a lot more directive.
Vince, do you want to answer this one? So because of our population, we're being elevated to manage our stormwater systems much more specifically. So again, that I want to say it's proactive or educational or whatever, but because our population sized, we're graduating to a higher level of sophistication of how we manage our stormwater. And I'll just leave it at that. Is that a good summary?
That's accurate. We're going to have to look forward to other implementation, specifically participating in the MS4 program. Yep, that's very accurate.
Which program I couldn't hear the.
MS4
Familiar with that?
deals with pollutants and runoff and quite a bit of that stuff.
Am I correct in understanding that comes with the action plan, though? That's not for this document in particular. That's more integrated. The metrics are more on that document than this document, correct?
Yeah, this is just more high-level policy. That the MS4 stuff is a population trigger that we're going to jump into, but that doesn't mean that how we develop that plan and it evolves over time wouldn't draw from some of this guidance.
I think that the near term, it's very expensive once you start getting into those things and how you're going to pay for it, and we're going to have to raise taxes to pay for that. It's a huge issue. It's great to have the state tell us we have to have these goals, but the state's not giving us the money to achieve those goals.
Well, but I think one of the important distinction, there's kind of a double edge, right? Like, so how do you retrofit one? And two, when you implement with new. So, I mean, there's a couple ways you can look at it. So as new developments come in, they're going to have to meet the new standards, right? Like, so there's probably very little cost at the town other than reviewing and ensuring that those things are. The trick comes into any of these things of, what is currently built and how do we adapt those systems, those neighborhoods, whatever it is, to comply, conform, and we're dealing with that with everything from ADA ramps to non-conforming legal structures. That's just how cities operate and towns operate.
A lot of pre-existing non-conforming use, but I think that all these are great goals, and I would love to live that way. But I think behind it, the economics and what's for the good of Timnath? Is this going to encourage economic development in the town of Timnath, or is it going to discourage economic development? I think we need to really think through that. I love the goals, but I just worry how we're going to pay for it.
Kara, if you've noted those things, presumably, okay, let's keep her going here.
Yes, Brian is helping with taking notes, and when he comes up, I will be taking notes. All right, so these are on wildfire resilience and hazard mitigation, ensure community and ecosystem resilience to climate change and wildfires, and ensure community and ecosystem resilience to extreme heat and drought.
One of the conflicts with this and the previous ones, we want to encourage natural habitat, natural grasslands, but then we want to cut it all down to prevent wildfires. So we need to at least recognize that conflict somewhere in these goals so that we're not blind to the fact that we're trying to do two different things that may be mutually exclusive.
And we can make sure that we provide some clarification so it doesn't appear to be at conflict. Thank you. Your point's well taken.
Kind of related to that, this is an area that I think we need to be more prescriptive to HOAs and metros. We've been reluctant to engage with them. We've been reluctant, it seems like we've been reluctant to be prescriptive with them, but I think we need to in this area and a couple others.
I apologize that I didn't put my note out on this one, but when it talked about wildfires, it talked about these open areas and being able to build certain things in them to try to help mitigate those wildfires. Does that resonate with what I'm saying? Can you elaborate a little bit on what that meant? How you'd go into an open area and change it to help mitigate?
Develop a grasslands management plan to manage fuels and reduce the risk. Trying to look for where you're referring to. Which goal are you referring to?
I'm sorry, I can't find it. There was an acronym with it. If it doesn't come,
You want to look it up and
Yeah.
maybe you'll see it. Hang on a second. You want to look it up and we can come back to it, okay? How about that? Is that all right? Keep us on path here.
Okay, so this next section is on housing in neighborhoods. This is about promoting diverse and attainable housing supply. So the goal is promote the development of missing middle housing types to increase housing diversity, improve attainability, and better align housing supply with the needs of smaller households, workforce population, and changing demographics.
So I have a few notes in this area. There was one part that said where they support complete neighborhoods. What does that mean?
Where they can, so building housing in neighborhoods that also provide for a livable community experience. So also having elements such as the amenities, services, retail, parks and rec opportunities, trails, transportation connections. So having all of those elements that help to make a complete neighborhood is what it's talking about.
So with that, and I saw that in, some of the text there, and one of the things I thought of is we'd have to guard against that, we create connected silos.
We create
Connected silos. So, the more complete it is, it seems like the more you kind of disconnect the neighborhoods. To me, anyway, that you have these independent pods that don't necessarily have to interact with each other.
Oh, well, also there are other parts of the comp plan that help to build that cohesion across neighborhoods. It's not meant for neighborhoods to be complete and separate. But how do we use things such as transportation, sidewalks, trails, bicycle connections to help to make those connections across neighborhoods?
Mm-hmm. And then in there, it said, there was one item that said, ensure zoning and land use codes don't restrict. And then it went on. But does that mean that some areas this is proposing that we relax requirements for some areas?
How that happens will still need to be evaluated. So this is just a policy so that the town can then take a look at their land use codes with a lens of seeing where those conflicts may exist. And then at that point in time, after understanding where those conflicts are, those decisions can be made on if anything needs to be relaxed or encouraged or whatever the case may be.
And then related to that, in item 3, it says, it talks about align the housing related fees, incentive, infrastructure, financial tools, all of those things in there. And it kind of felt like that was saying that ensure some areas are paying less than others. And, maybe it's just my views, but that's inherently unfair. And, we just don't want to me, you don't want to create, if there's different requirements in areas and they're paying less and things, is it going to be a net negative for the town? But also, you really create, you risk starting to create things that, areas of the town that look and feel very different from the others, which is something I wouldn't think we would want either. So I think we have to be very, very careful. That was, I was not happy to read those two pieces of this.
Yeah, I think Marty's being very diplomatic in the way he says it, but some of these guidelines are indirectly encouraging trailer parks. We need to think about, are we building desirable housing or undesirable housing in Tinmouth? Affordability is kind of a different thing, but I think that we need to be realistic with what our goals are.
So just to answer the previous question on this policy of fees, so that could be in terms of taking a look at the impact fees. The impact fees right now charge the same whether you are doing an apartment unit or a duplex or a single family home. So the cost is higher, regardless of what type of unit it is. It results in a situation where you're still paying the same in terms of impact fees, whether it's a single family home or a smaller home.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens with that is that then that project becomes even more expensive and difficult for developers to build. So it's looking at barriers like that, but not necessarily saying, the new development, there are going to be lower fees for the folks that live there. That's not the intent of this particular
And then,
policy.
kind of still related to that, one of the things we'd have to be careful of is, we have apartments, we have townhomes, we have duplexes, all of those things here. And all of them came in and gave us the marketing pitch about diversity of housing, and then all of them are built as luxury facilities that do nothing for affordability either, so.
So these were developments that came in that were supposed to, I'm sorry, would you mind
Well,
clarifying?
they just, they gave us the pitch that these are, diversity in housing options and things like that, which technically, yes, they were, but they're all high end, so.
Yeah.
Was there a question? Yeah, I'm just,
Most of mine are statements, not questions.
okay.
I think that goal has to support, affordable rental housing as well as lasting home ownership opportunities, which means we should be thinking about shared equity, community land trust, deed restrictions that we can help define as a town, land partnerships, and homeowner stability programs. So that supports true diversity and affordable housing, not just diverse products.
A related but unrelated question. For Karen and really Scott, is part of the assessment whether or not our process of approving new development is excessive? Is that part of it all? This is an innocent question, but a serious one. Is that included?
You mean the development review process?
Yeah, development review process is satisfactory or it's excessive. I'm just curious if that's part of this is a sincere question. I'm not.
Yes,
anything.
I appreciate the question. No, this did not evaluate the development review process. That would be a different process and a different study. But one comment that we have received from council is to put a goal in about streamlining the development review process. So we did do that. But yes, that would be a separate evaluation.
Because the reason I ask is, we've for years been hearing from most developers that our planning and review staff does a great job of moving things along with as much as they can. They run into hurdles, and we understand that. But we've always been hearing that, and that's tied in together with, we have very high standards here in Timnath. So I was just curious if this was part of this process. And I think you've answered that. But Scott, anything you can add as we think about what can be done? Is that a next step to look at that and see if?
A lot of this stuff is the next step. I think this is just providing that policy direction. So again, regarding zoning, you know, one of the things that once we get done with the comprehensive plan, the next thing we're going to look at is updating our zoning code based on the comprehensive plan. That's the next step. I can't tell you what that result's going to be and what these policies and guides will result in. Likewise, you know, the align housing related costs, we hear it all the time that, you know, our fees, there's a lot of fees in Timnath and they're different in every subdivision. I'm telling you that right now. And so the comment that like, oh, we're going to change the metric to make other people pay less or different, it's that way right now today. Every subdivision pays a different fee, period. There's different deals that were negotiated. We had different reimbursements. That's fact. So I think the question is that the model we want to continue to move forward, or do we want to align our fees and costs to the use, the type of use, the size of the use? And that's, you know, we do an impact fee study that's coming up next. We're looking at assessing our fees because we were largely a consultant-based town where we deferred those costs to the development community. They paid for our consultants to review projects. We're bringing staff on. And so these are things that we're evaluating to make sure that, back to Tom's point about, you know, can we sustain these things? Can we afford these things? And that's part of our process, is to make sure that our fees are fair and that we're providing them equitably across the town. Yeah.
Thank you.
So those are all in the pipeline, but we're not going to get those answers with
That's what I
this
want.
level of the document.
That's what I wanted to know. Thanks.
I have a couple more things in
Go ahead.
this area, but one of the things, you know, the thing I was thinking though, Scott, as you were saying that, is if there's any discussion about affordability, in my mind, that's in direct conflict to the metros that we're so married to here, because nothing's going to be affordable if you're in a metro. The next thing is this. In this section, it says that there's a lack of diversity in housing. Tom got to this one a bit, so I won't belabor it. It's just, you know, and maybe saying it a different way, for the foreseeable future, we're essentially a bedroom town with some businesses. And, you know, this is going to have to address how that transitions, because it's not an easy transition. You know, lack of public transport, lack of services, things like that for people that can't travel independently or would have issues doing that. So, last thing is, this encourages high density in some areas, which really, you know, we'd have to reconcile the vision that, you know, has a lot of statements about rural feel and things like that. You know, just do those coexist? How would they coexist? So that's it for this section.
And remind me again, what was the first item that you
I have
mentioned?
them all written down, and
Okay.
you guys can have this, so you don't have to take notes real quick.
Okay. And I apologize. There was a point that you made that I was going to follow up on. But yes, that's why we have in the comprehensive plan, we have the different components of the plan that address different topic areas, because it takes all of those policy areas to help make a town work together. So, you know, these policy areas don't work in isolation. It takes more than housing. It takes transportation. It takes jobs. It takes trails and open space, all of that to work together so that you don't have any one component in isolation. But thank you very much for your comments.
Are you going to, I have a question about the housing action plan, or I don't want to take you off your game plan. Are you going to talk more about that specifically, or shall I go ahead and ask what I want to ask?
You can ask. I think towards the end of this, we just note that that's one of the next steps is the
Okay.
housing action plan.
All right, well, let's save it till the end, because you'll touch on it, if not cover it wholly,
Okay.
answer my question, so go ahead.
Bill, if I might, I found my reference.
Okay,
Before we go too far. In the notes, it says, reduce wildfire risks in developing WUI areas through land use planning. I'm not familiar with WUI.
That's the urban wildland interface. We actually adopted the Colorado Wildfire Resiliency Code, so we're already currently doing that. So, I got with Cara a little bit to help coordinate and improve some of that language, but currently Timnath is already adopting the building and wildland fires. So, yeah.
We made those updates as well. Right. The next two goals on housing and neighborhoods: ensure housing supply supports local employment, business growth, and economic competitiveness. And the next goal is provide housing options in neighborhoods that meet the needs of residents at all stages of life.
I like that concept. As a
Which-
senior
which one?
citizen, I'm all in favor of promoting aging in place.
Well, it's an important issue for sure. I mean, you have residents that currently live here that many of them want to stay living here. And housing helps, when we say diversity in housing, it touches on a lot of different facets, including age and supporting people as they age in place.
You're going to be stuck for the duration with me.
wouldn't have it any other way, Tom.
All right, on housing and neighborhoods, align housing development with future place types and current planned infrastructure capacity to achieve the desired character, scale, mix of uses, and long-term vision for growth. And improve neighborhood connectivity, livability, and community connectedness through accessible neighborhood design. Looks good. Questions? These are on economic development. So leverage Timnath's regional access to attract employment, commerce, and mixed-use development that strengthens the local economy and tax base. And one on workforce alignment. Align land use and infrastructure planning with workforce strengths to attract and retain high-quality employment opportunities.
I don't think we need to belabor it, but we need to recognize that economic development is a competitive sport in Colorado. And we really need to think about our strategies, both offensively and defensively, and look at strategies for annexation. In the south part of Denver, it became an all-out war, and people had to annex defensively in order to keep from getting swallowed by some of the other subdivisions. So I think that we need to look at that here in Timnath because it's a reality. So there's going to be some opportunistic, maybe flagpole annexations to keep Fort Collins from taking our development area. Not that they might, they would.
We have agreements in place.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay, and on economic development, diversify Timnath's economic base to improve fiscal resilience, reduce reliance on residential revenues, and support long-term sustainability.
I didn't recall seeing the fourth bullet. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? What do you mean by pilot pop-up and incremental? Is that like seasonal or?
Right. It would be, one example of how to diversify the economy. It could be a pop-up location for, a seasonal time period. Maybe it's a holiday store or something like that. So yeah, that's what that refers to.
I think it's important to reflect some of these on the maps that you showed earlier. And there's a few places, for example, around what they call the Peanut, to the north and west of the Peanut along Harmony. That was not flagged as a high priority, but I think it should be a high priority in terms of economic development in the near term. I think there was some gray areas where there was not enough data available, or that I think is something that we may have to make that a red priority.
Thank you. And one thing that we'll be doing as a next step in our strategic growth effort is taking that place types map and overlaying it with strategic growth, with the annexation plan, and finding those areas where there could be strong economic development potential, areas where there could be strong housing potential. So we'll be doing some alignment there to address that. Right, these goals on economic development, the first one is ensure adequate land, zoning, and infrastructure capacity to support a range of modern employment and industrial use, and focus economic development efforts in designated centers and corridors that support local serving businesses, reduce commute distances, and reinforce the town's place space. I had to remember if there's something blocking that word.
Or get you back to the previous slide. Just, is it safe to say in some of your outreach, particularly with the, you mentioned guide our growth in particular, with anybody else, particularly some of the Old Town people, did you hear from some of those people in terms of reducing barriers for small businesses in the context of are there opportunities that aren't in conflict with other state, local, regulatory, ADA, whatever, fire department, fire district? Did you hear from any people about their questions about what opportunities there might be to tailor those more to small businesses?
Specifically, from those groups, I would have to check, our records in terms of what we heard from who. But I would say, in general, there is support that we heard from small businesses. That is something that has come up in community engagement.
I would be surprised if there wasn't, but we don't have a whole lot of small privately owned businesses, but I just curious if you'd heard from some of them. Thanks.
We would just have to be careful in that area that we're making the right investments there. I mean, they're not going to be big employment generators, but we just have to be careful there.
Retail tax growth.
Retail tax growth, and making sure that they're viable businesses and not artificially supported.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to be diplomatic again.
You're good.
I got you. I got you. Yeah.
On this slide, Scott, I think the plan for future utility capacity is really something that can be tied to annexation and zoning. For example, Timnath is the crossroads of water pipelines for all of northern Colorado. And by selectively, opportunistically annexing utility locations, whether they're solar farms or pipeline corridors or whatnot, bringing them into Timnath because it's easier to permit something in Timnath than it is in the county, and even looking into Weld County to annex some of that, I think that would be a wonderful goal to consider as we look at the future. And you might be able to trade a pipeline easement for future water if you played your cards right.
Or you can just tap into them. Oops, was that out loud?
Thank you.
Going into transportation and mobility, improve transportation, improve safety, connectivity, and travel choice by advancing multimodal transportation investments and supportive land use patterns, and integrate land use and regional transportation planning to expand multimodal mobility options and improve access to jobs and services.
When you look at rail service, are you seriously looking at the railroad through Timnath as a possible passenger line?
Not to that level of specificity, but you want to have the policies in place that support that. You're talking like 10 years, 20 years. And some of that could be, maybe it's not rail, but maybe it's connecting to rail. Maybe it's connecting to transportation in transit that is already there and having that like last mile connection point.
Yeah, I think that boat's already passed us by.
What she was saying is take the bus to that rail station, then take the rail. But we gotta get a bus here first.
Or shuttle.
Passed us by literally or figuratively, which is, okay, go ahead.
Create a safe, well-connected, and continuous network of pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure that links neighborhoods to activity centers, schools, parks, regional destinations, and transit access points. And the second goal is to continue to improve safety for all road users while maintaining efficient traffic flow.
Before you move on, my own personal campaign, somewhere mentioned strengthening the connection between Old Town and the Poudre Trail through safe, accessible, and well-designed pedestrian bicycle. Thrilled to see that in there. While it doesn't mention the bridge that's necessary to do that, just having it in there gives me a little comfort that a very, very viable aspect of the original dream book from, 12, 13 years ago, certainly speaks to this. And it would be a real shame. My colleagues have all heard me campaign for this. Be a real shame if there's not a better and safer way off that trail into Old Town, certainly. Here we are at the midpoint of 45 miles shining star in this trail. So this is a good start, what you have in there.
So
Tour de Fat, I'll cover that in reports.
So, commissioners, I want to kind of be cognizant of time, and certainly we can stay longer if we need to, but our other work sessions, we try to keep it within an hour and a half, and so I want to take this opportunity. Cara can continue to go through the remaining slides, but I might suggest that if there's anything you want us to focus on, maybe is a good time now for kind of open mic night and kind of highlight those items rather than kind of going through the remaining slides, if you're okay with that. But we certainly can kind of go through the remaining slides. There is a lot of material still left, but I just want to give an opportunity if you haven't had a chance to speak up on anything, this might be a good time to kind of change up the program, and let's hit anything that you might be interested in, or we can continue to proceed forward.
Well, I don't want to take you off your plan. If you need to continue, let's do that.
I am at the pleasure of the staff and the commission.
Okay, well, because I'm unclear, are you saying there's still more to cover before we open it up for general questions,
I
or?
want to leave some time for open questions.
Me too.
I'm not saying these other sections aren't important, but you have the material. You can email us your comments. I just want to allow some time for any additional things that you have. And again,
well,
just trying to be fair to everybody's time and energy. I just want to try to be consistent with.
All right, well, let's get it right. If we'll try and also get it as quickly as possible. Why don't you go ahead and continue through these slides, and then we'll make sure we get to any general questions.
Okay. I will try to go through a little quicker, so if it's too fast, please let me know. The next two goals are on community facilities and services. Align community facilities and services with projected population growth and development patterns. Optimize and modernize facilities to improve efficiency, flexibility, and long-term sustainability. Keep going. Please stop me.
Go ahead.
Okay. Provide accessible, integrated, and community-oriented facilities that enhance service delivery and user experience.
I don't think anybody argue with that, would they?
And open space, parks, rec, and open space. Ryan's going to come up and go over those.
The fun and easy one. She gets the hard questions. So parks, recreation, and open space, we have a goal there on system capacity and town identity. Maintain and enhance high-quality park and recreation system, and strengthening identity and sense of place. Any questions or inputs there?
Certainly this has ranked consistently high in public surveys.
Absolutely.
One thing, and I'll make it quick, and it's a statement, nothing to address, is generally I have an issue with this section. And there's a lot of talk about development of the resources, which a lot of times is in contrast to open spaces. So like if you look at the trails going through Fort Collins, they don't knock down a bunch of trees to put the trail in. They go around the trees and they preserve the wetlands. We put a trail in along the north edge of the reservoir last year. We destroyed a lot of wetlands with crushed concrete and elevated trails to protect the trail. There's a year-round population of geese. It's a fraction this year of what it was last year because we destroyed nesting grounds and wetlands. There was 0 goslings this year, first time I've ever seen that. So we just need to be careful that, because it seems we're systemically destroying the resources that they're building the infrastructure to go enjoy, if that makes sense. I think you put it one time, we're loving it to death.
I definitely see that happen a lot in Colorado. So balancing the investment in the system with the goals of conservation and
Yeah,
sustainability.
we've created Boyd Lake instead of something nice.
The next topic here under Parks, Recreation, and Open Space relates to arts and culture and stewardship. So expanding arts and cultural programming and facilities, and then prioritizing open space stewardship. We were just talking about this by protecting and enhancing the Poudre River corridor, trail alignment, etc. Any additional feedback or questions here?
Okay. Keep going, Ryan, please.
This may be the last one or second to last. Arts, culture, tourism, community identity, and downtown revitalization, and economic development and tourism.
Great goals, as long as we have the money to do it.
All right.
Read.
All right, there is one more. Regional collaboration and connectivity, so strengthening partnerships and connections for arts, culture, and tourism, and heritage preservation and education.
Okay.
All right. Told you I got the easy ones. I'm going to let Kara come back and talk about next steps.
Okay, just to hit on some next steps, and then we will wrap up. So next steps, we're going to take the feedback that we've received over the last couple of days with these great conversations with you all, the council members, as well as the Technical Review Committee. We're going to update the goals and policies, and then that will help us to also update and finalize the implementation action plan. We'll also be finalizing the place types map and the descriptions, the place type descriptions. And then all of that will help us to bring that plan to full development. So multiple pieces that all work together to bring that comprehensive plan to completion. And on next steps, the town has also recently received a grant from the state to do a housing action plan. So over the next couple of months, we'll be starting to talk with the town about that. We will continue to stay on with the town for the development of that housing action plan. And as it notes here, this is another new state requirement. Housing action plans will have to be completed by January 1, 2028.
Now I can ask? Now?
Yes.
Good time to, okay, okay. Yeah, I saw this and didn't know what this was. What can you tell us briefly? How does this proceed? What's it encompass? What flexibilities are there? I mean, what is it based solely on metrics? Is it based on well, anything you can tell us, tell us about how this will proceed?
Yes, I can probably get further detail for you, but it will ultimately provide strategies for developing more affordable housing. There's also a requirement that towns have to also have a displacement strategy as well. So just high level, it's a plan in place to help ensure that now that you've identified those needs in a housing needs assessment, which was also required by the state, you put some goals and strategies in place to help to produce more affordable housing.
How are we defining affordable? HUD regulations?
I'm sorry?
Is it HUD regulations, so affordable is 80% or below area median income, or are we defining it in another way?
I believe that's how we defined it in the housing needs assessment, but I can confirm that for you.
Is the housing action plan process, the housing needs assessment, if you will, does that mandate that, how should I put this, does it mandate that there be affordable housing or lack thereof? What determines that? Do they take into account the existing socioeconomic circumstances? I just curious how that works.
Does it mandate?
Well, does it, it seems that the focus is to address whether there should be more affordable housing, or does it mandate that there should be affordable housing, or does it mandate, or does it, the conclusions from that help you decide whether you need affordable? Just an innocent question. It's the first I'm hearing about the housing action plan in this process. I'm just curious.
So we did the housing needs assessment as part of baseline work for this. So that's a requirement that we have to submit to the state, which very done, performed, and so we have that data and information. The next step is we have to do a housing action plan by January 1st, 2028. My understanding is, if I'm understanding your question, mandate, there's no mandate that is going to require anybody to, quote unquote, require affordable housing. With the action plan is just like any other strategy, is does a town have a strategy to address its housing needs based on our housing needs assessment? And with that, it opens some eligibility for state funding through Proposition 123. So if you don't have a housing action plan, and if you don't have any strategies, then we being Timnath or a developer couldn't leverage that opportunity for that funding mechanism. So I wouldn't call it a mandate in the sense of, by doing a housing action plan, Timnath is therefore required to do Section 8 vouchers, right? Like that's not what the housing action plan is. That could be part of the strategy of developing a plan, but there's no mandate in doing that. And it could be ways to look at evaluating our zoning and creating different zoning standards. we've already talked about applications and fees, how do we change our fee structures? So there could be a lot of things as part of the housing action plan that addresses those housing needs. One of the things that I talked about with the other groups is there's a lot of talk about economic development, and I think the piece that's missing in that conversation, it's always about who's the next retailer coming to town, what can we do to recruit that business? They're not gonna come here if they can't hire anybody to work for those businesses. There's a certain limit on how far you can drive to qualify for a house, and there's how far you can drive to work for a job. So yeah, we have very high income earners, high medium household incomes, and there's a desired, we're a desirable location for retail and other uses to come to town, but we're hearing from other big employers, they're struggling to recruit because of the cost of living and things. So that needs to be part of the puzzle and the equation, and that's part of this housing action plan, that there could be a strategy to talk about workforce housing and other strategies so that we can kind of, as Cara said earlier, all these things are interrelated, so we can think about them individually. But if we want to be aggressive on our sports game and economic development, we can't forget about some of those other pieces of, it's not just about recruiting the next Costco coming to town. There's other things that we have to think about.
Thank you. Other questions about that? More general questions?
I just have a general one.
Please.
Are we on track then to having this done by the end of the year? I mean, great package, by the way, and a lot of good links, and all of them alluded that everything had to be in place by December 31st, I believe, of this year.
Yeah, so yes, we're on track. We're a little bit behind schedule, mostly, more on us, staff, than our consultants. The schedule would be to probably bring it back to you sometime in October, and then town council. The challenge gets to be with the holidays. It gets to be hard to schedule meetings. Plan B, backup plan, would be to adopt this with the understanding just to meet the state requirements, and then we could come back and make revisions early next year to fine tune if there are things that weren't fully settled on that. So there could be a kind of a double strategy. I mean, I don't think we'll need to do that, but if it looks like there's some issues that still haven't been resolved, then our approach would be to adopt a plan to meet the state requirements, which pretty much we're pretty close there already. And then it would be coming back later in early 27 to address any final issues that may remain. That was a long-winded question, Renzo.
No, it was a good
Answer.
And whatever we can do to help to make sure those dates are met, we'll just keep us informed.
At this stage, can you see any, between two of you, any major differences in what's likely to be the new comprehensive plan versus the present comprehensive plan? Any changes in the growth management area for one? Any?
Well, there's more requirements through the state, and so that's going to be new. Again, I don't necessarily view them as mandates. I know people feel like, well, the state's making us doing it. They're important topics we need to think about. There's no, I think I shared with you some links that you can look at the state. There aren't necessarily prescriptive things we have to do about, like tourism. Like, why are we talking about tourism? Well, we have to think about tourism. Doesn't mean we have to necessarily come up with anything like a tourist. We're not really a tourist destination, but it is part of the Colorado economy. I mean, the Colorado economy is very heavily reliant on tourism. So there's some new topic areas that we haven't talked about. There's some language in here that is raising some concerns, and we need to understand, the language matters about density and diversity and affordability and workforce housing. And so we're hearing different feedbacks from our different groups about what do those mean, what are the definitions, so there's better understanding of those expectations. Complete neighborhoods, what is our neighborhoods incomplete? Some of this is aspirational. We want to strive to getting to something, but maybe not a bridge too far. So there'll be some differences. I think you're seeing some of that with the review that we've been engaged with, and I know some of the planning commissioners were involved in the last process. So I suspect you're seeing some differences.
I'd also be remiss, and I'm not trying to, our two members, Mara and Janelle, that serve on the technical review committee. Anything briefly you want to add from your discussions with them to reinforce anything? You don't have to, but I just thought if you wanted to, I wanted to give you that opportunity. Okay. Just wanted to ask. Okay. Other general questions?
So if you guys have anything that you didn't have an opportunity to think about, or tomorrow you're like, send us an email, write it down. We're happy to incorporate it. So appreciate your feedback.
Okay, thanks. Great job. Appreciate very much. And anything else you'd like to add?
No, I just appreciate being before you all to talk about this planning process, and thank you for being so engaged and for all of your helpful feedback tonight.
Okay, thanks. Real quickly, I'm going to move just a couple reports that I have, and anything else you want to share. Our evaluation process, which started in early June, is complete. I appreciate, as I've shared with you, you all hanging in there. As you know, it was characterized as making it up as we went along. I appreciate Scott Robinson, whom I met with twice, and when I sent him the report that I also sent to you, indicated if he has questions, happy to share it. Sit down and talk with him, and that report will, at his discretion, will then go to his staff. But again, appreciate that. Real quickly, because there was no need to put it under updates, I just want to mention between our last meeting, we advanced revised plat for Ladera. Council accepted our recommendation. They also accepted the conditional use recommendations on 3 businesses in Ladera. They did accept, and I would say essentially, and again, the credit goes to Tom for bringing up the issue with the auto repair place. They clearly, I would say, gave us our marching orders when this comes back as a site plan. I did accumulate some additional data, and I sent it to Troy Jones, who delivered that presentation, and for his consideration. But again, Tom, good job bringing that up. Council certainly agreed, and made it known that you hit the home run on that one. So, and I'm confident that will work out fine. So, anything else for the good of the order, or we adjourn? Nope. Scott.
Yeah, on that parking thing, I did want to follow up a little bit. Did receive some feedback from the developer, and kind of conveyed through the company, Christian Brothers. They do have their standards, and they feel that the site meets their minimum standards. So, haven't seen the site plan yet. I do understand that they may have found a little bit of wiggle room to add a few more spaces, but just want us to be cognizant that the property and the deal that they have negotiated is that they're pretty happy with meeting their national standards. They operate over 300 facilities across the country. So I think they feel pretty happy that there's more, it meets more than their minimum standards. So just wanted to share that information with you.
Very good. Well, we'll look forward to, when it comes forward as a site plan, addressing that, their satisfaction with that versus what we were hearing ourselves and from council, but I'm sure it'll work itself out. And the applicant, who acknowledged that they felt they could improve that, and from the oil change, as I recall, who said they had some options that might be helpful. So Anything else, commissioners?